Well, John Covach is the director of the Institute for Popular Music at the University of Rochester in New York and joins us now. I mean, just explain to us why George Michael was such a cultural icon.
Well, it really comes down to those two big albums in the second half of the 1980s, Wham's Make It Big and his first solo album, Faith. I mean, those albums really established George Michael as one of the biggest performers of the 1980s.
I was quite surprised, though, to see people in their 20s tweeting condolences and saying how sad they were to hear that he'd passed away. So he obviously still appealed to a really broad range of people.
Yeah, it's true. And of course, today's young people are so connected via the web that they are almost a magpie generation that grabs music from all different eras. I mean, a lot of those same people are still Beatles fans.
I mean, his rise kind of coincided with the rise of MTV as well. How did he use that to kind of propel his career forward?
Well, the early years of MTV, the record companies had to be convinced, in America at least, that there was some value in investing money in these videos. But by the time Wham came along, the record companies were already willing to invest, and you had to look good. And George Michael was an extremely talented man, a man who wrote and produced and performed, played instrumentally on a lot of his hit records, but he was a very attractive man, and that made a lot of difference in those early years of MTV.
I mean, I had no idea that he also produced and wrote. I mean, it was incredible talent. Incredible talent. Why do you think it is that so many of us weren't aware of his range?
Well, because that's not really what you front load the image with. I mean, he was such a charismatic man with a fantastic voice that those were really the things that the fans were focused on. Little did they know behind the scenes that he was such a creative master of so many other things, not unlike Prince, who in many ways was a similar kind of artist who played all the instruments and wrote everything on a lot of those big hits. You'd never know it, but that's the way it worked out.
And were there any particularly well-known people that he produced for or impacted on?
Well, the whole rise of blue-eyed soul through the 80s with not just George Michael, but Hall & Oates and a number of other artists really kind of rekindled, I think, an interest in a lot of the younger artists in that kind of soulful singing. And boy, we sure heard a lot of that kind of singing throughout the 90s and really in the last 10 or 15 years.
What do you think his legacy will be?
Well, we music historians tend to look at that moment when an artist made his or her first really big impact. And so for George Michael, that will be the second half of the 80s. It'll be Make It Big, it'll be Faith. And even though he continued to be very productive and do a lot of great things after that, that first big splash, that golden period for him will be the one that most music historians will really highlight.
George Covach, thank you so much for teaching me some things. Thank you.